Hey!
Hey.
You have to intro Jason.
One of my dearest friends, Jason Abel.
How long have you guys known each other?
We met in the 6th grade at a bat mitzvah.
What happened? I don't remember.
I wanted to be friends with you because you had really big bangs and you were super cool. And we were at
honestly, big bangs makes you super cool back then.
Everyone wanted to be friends with Jen Jakin.
So nice.
Yeah.
Wait, was she nice then?
Very nice.
She's just always been nice.
So nice.
Did Jen want to be friends with anyone though?
She was friends with everyone then.
But
Very
she doesn't
different.
actually like people that much.
It was very different.
It was externally.
Yeah.
I went internally. I was like crying.
Jen was definitely
inside.
extrovert turned introvert.
Okay,
Yeah.
so you met at a bar mitzvah.
And then we became best friends.
And they became best friends.
And then
We've had a lot of life experiences together.
a lot of life experiences.
Can I have just like a highlight reel?
I lost my virginity in Jason's basement.
Mm-hmm. And then I told her friend about it, and then she yelled at me.
and-
And now I'm not trusting
Jen
the
is
secrets.
very private.
Very
You told
private.
somebody, oh, that would kill her. How mad were you?
So I didn't want to tell anyone because I was very private. It was with my boyfriend at the time, and
It was after junior prom. How cliche.
it was after junior prom in Jason's basement on his futon.
There was a private room, by the way. This wasn't out
it
in the
wasn't
open.
Did you plan on it? Like, were you like, I'm going to go to junior prom and I'm going to
She was like, tonight's the night. It's prom.
I was singing beforehand. No, but so this was around Passover.
Of course.
Okay. Yeah.
This is the best part of it. And I think after we had sex, we lost the condom or something.
Yeah,
Oh
because
my
you
God.
text me and you're like, we can't find the condom. And I was like, oh shit. Because it was my dad's office. So I made a joke. This will resonate with any Jewish listeners. The afikomen is where you find the matzah, right? So I was like, Jen, I'm on the search for the afi condom. And because it was
But
Passover
you were
and it was
so
missing.
funny even junior year.
I
He
know.
has been funny his whole life.
That's all I got. So,
Entire life. Other experiences, we were in anatomy together.
in high school, yeah, and Jen, we took anatomy and Jen was scared of blood, and she
I
used to
passed out from blood.
She used to pass out in class,
yeah.
and
Yeah.
I used to have to wheelchair her to the nurse as she was unconscious.
I would be if something would make me pass out, I'd be like, Jason, hold my head. And he would have to just squeeze my
Yeah, I
head
would
really
just-
hard.
That's
just hold
that's
Jen.
some Vegas
Yeah.
nerve shit, right?
Yeah.
totally.
Although
Right.
you were really good at dissecting the cat,
Yeah,
which
you
is
guys-
so
Wait, I'm
So-
sorry. You had to do what in your high school?
Guys,
so
Exactly.
problematic, right? Isn't that
Now
problematic?
that it's very fucked up.
Yeah.
Like I had to do an owl pellet, but that's just puke.
I'm sorry, what?
Poop.
No, it's puke. An owl pellet is puke.
I thought it was poop.
No, I'm pretty sure it's their puke.
Really?
Could be their puke. Not sure, but either way, not
We
the
had to
same
do
as a
that, too.
cat, guys.
Yeah, Jen was skinning the cat,
No.
And I'm
no blood.
I'm throwing up in the corner. She's like, why? Meow. And I'm like, all right, this is really
Really
a problem.
terrible. Listen,
Yeah.
This seems like a PETA issue.
It really should be. I don't think they do it anymore.
They shouldn't. And
Yeah.
before that, there was a frog. We dissected other things. The cat
Yeah.
was the most traumatic.
For sure.
Now that I think about it,
For
pains
sure.
my soul. Now that
Was
I
this
have a cat.
2004?
2006?
6, yeah.
Yeah.
2006, I know. Really terrible. Anyway, so we've known each other forever.
Okay.
And
what has kept the relationship alive? Tell me more.
Well, I think Jen and I, we talk about how we are both stupid and have stupid, meaningless conversations. And we sort of serve that role for each other where we both have intense work lives and then we'll get on the phone and talk
about nothing.
literally nothing for 40 minutes. And I'm like, oh God, that was such a break from having to use my brain.
Exactly.
So,
Oh my god.
But at the same time, we can have deep conversations.
Okay.
And for the
true.
most
Yes.
part, we love talking about literally nothing.
yeah.
For an hour, we
It's
can
a good
talk about
balance.
nothing. It is.
That is a delicious balance.
delicious.
Delicious. I love that very much. Now, where's the depth come in?
So
Well, I mean,
This
for,
is now turned into an interview about your friendship.
I like it
yeah.
though.
Well, I like it too. For me, I have a free therapist on speed dial, but I try not to. I also Jen's just
You're
been
very respectful though.
yeah.
Very respectful.
Yeah.
Some people are not.
I'm sure some people are not, but Jen's also been my best friend since we were 12.
Forever.
So
Also, I can tell you if I'm annoyed with you, I can tell you.
oh yeah,
we
Jen's
have
called me
that relationship.
mean words before,
We've
but I've
gotten in
deserved
fights.
it.
When
yeah.
I feel like when you get in fights in your friendship and you make up, that's a real.
Yeah.
You know, you
no,
can get in
Well,
arguments.
it just goes to such deeper levels, right? If you have a friend that you can have conflict with and then you can have repair with, it brings you to such a deeper level moving forward that it's oh, we can actually have something real here.
100%. And also, you guys have a connection too.
I say we, and then I know you completely separate than Jen.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is that you used to work with my brother.
I did. It's actually really funny because when you guys first met was literally when I first started working with Jake. And I text Jen, and she was like, oh, I'm meeting my friend Emmalee. She went to Penn State. I was like, oh, who's that? She's like, Emmalee Beerley. I'm like, weird. My new work friend is Jake Beerley. So we literally became friends at the same time, me and your brother and you two in grad school.
And
Wow.
do you think my brother and I are different people?
Could not be more opposite. Like, very different.
Very
Very different.
people,
But
right?
also, like, in a way, like, similar sense of humor.
Yes.
Like, very similar sense of humor. Like, Jake has you both have amazing sense of humor.
But like,
but
who's funnier?
comes from...
No, probably my brother, because it's done in such an underlying
Yeah.
way. You don't see it coming, which makes it funnier.
Yeah, very dry humor.
Yes.
And
But I'm easier to get along. Like, I'm like the more warm one, but he's fucking funny.
yeah,
Yeah.
true. True.
So, Jason, why we brought you on today is not just to talk about our friendship, but we could.
Yeah.
But also to talk about your coming out story.
I came out to you first.
So, and I was the first one you came out to.
So, because when I first met Jason, I remember my brother being like, oh, you should go out with Jason. You would love him.
Oh, gosh.
So I can remember knowing you before you
And
came
then you
out.
met me and I was like, hey, girl. And you're like, I don't think this is going to work. Yeah, I came out to Jen like 7 or 8 years ago.
Okay, so wait, how old were you?
Okay.
Why did you decide to come out then? Tell us a little more.
Yeah, so I came out because I was gay. So that was like that was the underlying premise. I was like, all right,
Okay,
I like guys. So no, I was 24, and I guess I'd lived my whole life very like heteronormative life. I mean, secretly knowing since I was like born. I mean, as long as you can remember that you were straight, right? Like,
Yes.
As long as I can remember. Like Aladdin, I was like, ooh, like abs
was
on the match,
cute,
right?
yeah.
Like
Oh my
things
God,
like,
I
as
know,
far
right?
back as that.
Yes.
I like had always known, but I think I didn't fit a lot of the at least when we were growing up. I think it's
Yeah.
very different now. But when we were growing up, there wasn't like, Love Victor and Love Simon on TV.
No, there's
it was like
nothing.
only Will and Grace, right?
And I would say we grew up in a very heteronormative
environment.
Yes.
environment.
Yeah.
Like very,
Yeah.
like there wasn't a lot of space.
Yeah,
for
so I never felt like external pressure to come out because I was never being pushed in that direction. From
No one was like saying to you at one point,
No.
like, oh, like are you
Not at
gay?
all.
Like nobody made
no.
assumptions.
I never had that
Yeah.
experience, so I didn't like I felt like external pressure. It was all more internal. And then I think eventually, as I was like in my, in college, you can kind of like play the card. You're like, oh, drinking. You're like, I'm too
yeah.
drunk. Like, and not into like relationships. No college
Yes.
kids like.
Yeah.
It's like half and half, right? Like it's almost like half the people are like interested in like finding a relationship, but half just want to like party and have fun.
Yeah.
And so I think until after college when I realized like, okay, what's my life gonna look like? And then I sort of like figured out like, okay, this is not for me. Like I'm dating girls and I'm not. This is not it.
Not feeling
like,
it.
This is not.
This is not it.
For some reason, I feel like I just can't force myself into it. It's
No.
really weird, huh?
No, it was bad. It was like I wasn't about it. So
Now, did you have serious relationships? I didn't know you at this point in your life.
I had never like super serious.
Okay.
There was always like it always would get to some level and then I'd have to like end it,
Mm-hmm.
or like long distance. Like there was like a girl I really liked in New York and we liked each other, but we didn't live near each other.
Convenient.
Very
out,
convenient.
really
Yeah,
worked
things
out.
like that.
Yes.
That were like, when people grow up and they're like, oh yeah, I hooked up with someone at camp. And you're like,
Yeah.
sure, you have a camp girlfriend,
Right.
right?
Yes,
Like,
yes,
I had
uh-huh.
a camp girlfriend or like a long distance girlfriend,
Okay, yep.
But then I started dating this girl in Philly, and we went on like 4 or 5 dates, and it was coming to the point where we like needed to have sex, and I was like, no, I don't
just can't
want
do
to.
this.
So I finally like ended it, and I think my friends at that point were like, oh, like why don't you like her anymore? And I was like, I just don't like her, but like I couldn't really give a reason.
Yeah.
So then I slowly realized, like, okay, I need to come out. And I was making, I think a lot of people come out in, like, transition points. And I was leaving to go to grad school. So I knew I could be like, hey, guys, I'm gay. And run and literally, like, hit the road and not have to deal with it. And then go, like, drive 3 hours to grad school and be like, oh.
Well, it also sounds like you were around a lot of straight people.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Right, so
Oh,
like
yeah.
it wasn't like you guys had other friends
No, I
that were
had,
gay
like-
or coming
I
out or
literally
queer or
had
having.
no exposure.
No,
Like,
Wow.
we really.
yeah.
It was like very
Heteronormative.
heteronormative.
Yeah. Yeah. So eventually I was like, okay, it's coming a point where, like, I have to make a decision. Like, do I want to be happy in my life? And I was like, okay, it's time.
And were you at that point not happy?
Oh yeah, big time.
Yeah.
Big time. And I had like gotten in really good shape, lost a lot of weight, was making a career change.
We went to your sister's wedding together.
I know. So all these things had happened that would like there was nothing else I could point to be like, hey, here's why I'm unhappy anymore. You know,
you're like, no, don't worry. If I just lose weight, I'll feel really good about myself.
Yeah, well, that's a lot of like a lot of queer people who are in the closet.
Yeah.
Try and like pick something to harp on, like, oh, it's just my career, I need to do this, or like, oh, I'm really unhappy with my weight or my family dynamic or my friend situation, and you sort of like harp on something completely unrelated to your sexuality
because it's easier.
Oh, it's much more easier to deal with. It's much easier to make that kind of front and center.
Yeah.
And not have to face your sexuality. So anyway, we're going to a wedding, and Jen had just started dating Bill, and it was like pretty early you dating Bill.
Very early.
And I was taking Jen to my sister's wedding, and I was like, I feel like I should tell her before the wedding. And was
there a reason why? Like you want to like?
Well, I think I
what did the wedding have to do with him?
I also started like I finally like got the nerve to like change my settings on Tinder, and I was like talking to someone, and I wanted to talk to someone. I was excited. I wanted to like talk to someone about it. So I was like, all right, I think I'm gonna tell Jen. And we were like at her we were down the shore at her parents, and it was like just us, and we were like, I was like, how did this come up? I was sort of like,
I think you were like, I think we were just hanging out. You were like, can I come over? And I was like, yeah, sure.
Yeah, and I was like, I need to tell you something. And then I was like, wink, wink, wink. And then Jen, like, I think figured it out, probably.
Did you?
Yeah.
Now, did you think Jason might be gay before this?
Yes.
You did?
I think you asked me that night, too. And I said, yeah, I had some, like, thoughts that it was possible.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think that I was just I just needed to tell. I was like bursting out of me that I needed to tell someone. But the manner in which I told Jen was so funny. It was so much of like someone who's still deeply in the closet. Because I was like, first I was like, I think we need to get a drink and go sit outside, and I have to like tell you something serious. And Jen was like, okay, like I'm sure she. Oh wait, so obviously the only drink in the entire house, which is weird your parents had this, it was called like sexy romance drink or something, and it was literally
What? It was like a pink
it was literally like
martini
it was
drink?
a pink martini like pre-mixed in Jen's parents' freezer.
It was
like
disgusting.
and it was like the
How
gayest
old
drink.
were you guys? You could buy alcohol at this point.
We were definitely, we were lazy. Though.
Yeah, lazy, yeah.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
We could definitely buy alcohol, but we were lazy.
So I poured this like super gay drink into a martini glass, and I'm like, about to come out. So we went out to your porch, and I was like, hey, so I think that maybe I might not, sort of not love girls, kind of, but I'm never going to tell anyone or do anything about it, but like, I don't really like girls. And that was it. And you were like, that's wonderful. Like, so nice. Thank you for telling me. And if you never want to tell anyone else, you don't have to. And you can just, if you do want to, you should. But if you don't, just do what makes you happy.
Accepting of anything.
So accepting. Anything. Yeah, so accepting. So that sort of was my launch pad of like, okay.
I think I might have cried.
Did you? Yeah, I think you might have. Yeah.
I cried.
What a surprise.
Big
shocker.
Yeah, right?
Yeah. So then Jen was like the first person, and then it kind of went from there.
Okay, also at his sister's wedding, everyone would come up to us and they would be like, oh my God, like kind of thought we were like together.
In a couple. Yeah.
Perfect.
And Jason was about to go to grad school like far away, and they were like, oh my God, are you going to be so upset when you leave? I was like, so upset. I will be devastated. I would like hug him.
Yeah.
I'd be like, but we'll talk like every day.
It was terrible. Like people would come up to me and be like, aren't you like a lucky girl? And she's like, I'm the luckiest. Like I'm just going to miss him so dearly. And I was
you guys like fake? Were you guys pretending you were dating, or people just assumed?
People just assumed because we were like a date at a wedding.
Yeah.
Okay, I understand. Yes.
And I just hugged the shit out of Jason everywhere we
Yeah,
were.
that's true.
So I think it's sort of interesting, right? Because I think a lot of times we hear coming out stories, there's people who are like, other people in my life thought it, or I was like bullied. Like you never had any of that experience. Like your situation was so internal. Like, so that actually I think makes it almost even harder to come out because you have to decide all on your own.
Yeah.
Like,
and are you ever?
Well, I think it maybe is a less like traumatizing coming out experience.
Yes.
Because like I think if you're forced out at a young age or before you're ready, or like it's terrible to have to go through that. But you go through it earlier, and I think it makes it a little bit harder to find the like push to like get the nerve to come out if you're not, if no one else is pushing you and no one else thinks it. You're kind of like, okay, I could go on like this forever. Right. But yeah, it felt like it was time for me, but still it was a really hard experience. Like I told my sister, and she literally thought I was joking. And then my mom
Really?
like had no idea. But there were people that like, oh, I suspected it, or yeah, that's not surprising, or I knew, because
How
like,
did you feel when people
Yeah.
said that?
actually, it was like somewhat of a sense of relief, but I also wanted to know why. I was like, why did you think that? And like, my own parents didn't think that. You
Right.
know, actually, my dad said, I'm surprised you're telling me at this moment, and this is happening right now on this random Wednesday. But I'm not surprised in general, because I like avoided talking about girls with him forever, right?
Okay.
And then he stopped. So I think he probably had some more inclination that I was probably gay. But
Can you talk about how you told your parents?
yeah.
I remember this.
Wait, I wrote it down.
Okay.
And I went into my mom's room and I was like, you have to read this. And she was like, who's it from? And I was like, me. And she was like, okay. So I like handed her a note and walked out of the room.
Oh,
And then
you like
she
couldn't
read-
even be there during it.
Yeah, and then I walked back in and I was like, so? And she was like shocked. She was like floored. She like could not believe that I was gay. Also because I have a
Really?
very flamboyant cousin who I think that is in her mind.
So the comparison.
Yeah,
Right.
I think in her mind that is what gay was, right? Because they didn't grow up in an age where you saw like any variation of gay. You just saw like hyper feminine gays in media, right?
Yeah.
And,
Well, it's funny because then you talked about Will and Grace, right? Which we have two very different gay men
yeah,
in Will and Grace. Which I
Yeah.
feel like sort of was like the first introduction for a lot of people that like everything looks so different.
yeah. Yeah, but what I can't think of anything of like us, and the fact that you even can count the number of that's
Oh,
how you
yes.
know it's like in the
A
minority.
problem, yes.
Yeah,
100%.
because you can count on your hands the number of
Uh-huh.
instances in the media.
It's
where,
one. I can think of one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I got nothing else besides that one.
and then
frankly.
Modern Family came out, but we were
Okay,
like a little
but that's
later.
yeah.
But
that
now-
was, what is that?
Ellen
Yeah.
came out. And
Ellen,
and
yeah.
Wasn't there an Ellen
But there's a
DeGeneres
lot.
show?
I think
Yeah.
it's much more prevalent now in media, and
Oh
I
my
think
gosh,
it's
yeah.
a very. I think the generation growing up now has a very different perception.
Yes.
And they were the gay marriage generation, right? Like they grew
Mm-hmm.
up during this, like this change in the way. I mean, there's still obviously a lot of problems, but they grew up in this change in the way that like being gay was perceived in the media.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so
And-
much more. Like in movies.
In
There's
movies,
so
yeah.
many movies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think unless you grew up, right? So we had a wonderful episode with our great clinician Callie who talked about like growing up with two moms.
Yeah.
And like unless you happen to already be in that community, I don't think you were that exposed about it because it wasn't safe for many community members to be in smaller like subsystems, right? So like if you had two moms, you also probably knew a lot of other gay people because they had other
Yeah.
friends that were queer or
100%,
lesbians, right?
yeah.
So like, but like for us in our generation, now for Gen Z, it's totally different. For
I
Gen,
think so. Yeah.
it's like completely different, right? I remember like if someone was bi in my high school was like such a big deal, and now I feel like if you're in Gen Z and you're not bi, you're a fucking loser.
Yeah. It's like it's seriously like if you're not open as
Yeah.
like in
Fluid,
that generation, it's like you're a loser. You are, which is great.
No, I think it's awesome. I'm
yeah, it
like
is.
so happy.
But the piece I wanted to bring up about like you coming out to your parents by giving them a letter, I think is important because I think there's this idea of you have to come out in this specific way.
Yeah.
And I think that you can do it in the way that works for
Yeah,
you.
I actually had a conversation with someone, and they were like, this whole perception of you have to come out like face to face, and like you owe it to them. It's like that's bullshit.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it's your story to tell. It's whatever makes you comfortable. If it's a phone call, if it's a text message, like whatever you want to do. And if it's none of those, and you don't feel the need to come out, you don't have to.
Right.
And if you just want to start dating someone of the same sex, and that's your version of coming out, and you don't want to have the conversation, like you don't owe it to anyone to do that.
Right.
So for me, I always thought like I have to do this in person. It has to be a sit down. And then I was talking to someone and they were like, yeah, I like sent a long email to my parents, and like that was the way it came out. And they had this great relationship. And I was like, you know what? Like I'd be much more comfortable writing everything down because I'm gonna freeze up and just hand it to them and let them read it, and then
Yeah.
we can talk it through. So that was my
That's what but I think it's important. Like you did it in the way that worked for you.
Yeah, I think you also have to be respectful and like of the people you come out to that have this like certain vision of their child, especially your parents. They have the certain vision of their child and what their child's life is going to look like, that you want to be able to like answer questions for them and be open and understand it's going to take them time as well.
Yeah.
And it's okay if it takes them time to process, because it's sort of like telling anyone something about yourself that completely changes the notion of that person,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And
Especially
sort of-
your parents.
Especially your parents.
Did you have time with them to like answer questions like did they ask you questions about it? Did you sit down with them afterwards?
Yeah, I did. And I think I I mean, I like left to go back up to grad school because that felt safer to me than like
Yeah.
being in the house for 3 weeks. Although my parents, like, I knew they would be fine, right? Like, I knew there was some adjustment that would have to happen. I think it made me and my dad a lot closer.
What, how, like, you knew that they were fine, right? Because they hadn't said, like, overtly homophobic things. Like, what were, like, the signs that you knew there was safety?
I just felt like I knew my parents loved me, and I knew that they prioritized that, and there weren't any, like, I'd never heard them have any, like, sort of homophobic, you know, beliefs, and I kind of knew the way they thought, and I feel like just from being raised by them, I kind of understood that, like, hey, this might be a problem in terms of, like, their adjustment, but it's not going to change, like, the way they feel about me or that they love me, but I think it could take them time to process and understand the way my life is going to look is not how they thought it would. So, I mean, I think it took my mom a lot longer than I expected. I thought she would be like, because at that point we were really close. So I thought she would be like, go with the flow about it. And it was, and also my cousin had just came out and she was like giving advice to my aunt. Like, you have to accept him. It's who he is. And then like, listen. Yeah. So, and then my dad, I thought we weren't as close at the time. And I thought maybe being a more hetero kind of male dominated, you know, mindset, it would be tough for him, and it was like complete opposite.
Wow.
Because I think for him it was an explanation of like, here's maybe why we aren't so close. And well, it's easy also because then there's like no self-blame for him, you know, for like all the shit he did, where it's like, oh, this is why he was gay and he was like nervous talking to me. I actually didn't do anything wrong at all.
Yeah.
So.
It wasn't because I was over engrossed in my business.
No,
nothing like that. No,
nothing
never.
But no, I think I had security with them. I think the way they sort of raised me, and we talked about, you know, the way different types of people, like I knew they're tolerant, like they were very tolerant people.
Well,
you have great parents.
And it's interesting, right?
You
Because
do too. Yeah.
really, it's interesting also because like when you talk about safety, right? Like one, you were like, right, you did 24 and you had also already worked, right? So I think for some people there's this fear about if you come out younger in life, right? Like what happens if I get kicked out?
Yeah.
Like really, like what happens at a safety level if I don't have means, if I don't know what the situation's going to be? I guess there is like a little bit of safety of coming out later and having distance.
Thing people give it, like whenever I see gays like giving advice to each other, people are always like, make sure you have financial stability. Like if you feel like you're in a situation where you're debating coming out or not and you're super dependent on people that could then abandon you, it's a really hard thing to do and take the chance to do. And I'm not saying you shouldn't, but I think that a lot of people, when they're like, hey, I want my coming out experience to like be really positive and I want to feel safe about it, I think a lot of it has to do with financial independence, because if not, you could really be screwed. And then there's so much blame that would go from that, of you abandoning me. Not only you abandoning me emotionally in a time of need where like I'm coming out and I don't have your support, but also you're like financially telling me get out of the house, right? And you're putting me in this like really dangerous situation.
So like so vulnerable on so many different levels.
Oh yeah.
And there was a safety, it sounds like, for you too, like knowing that they were going to be there for you, and also you were going to grad school kind of separate from that.
100%. Yeah. And I think with people who you know, are debating coming out, I think feeling that level of security in other parts of your life, like if you're not ready to come out and you're like, oh, I really want to like get a new job, an apartment before I do, then wait. Like there's no pressure for you to do this. People are always like, no, I wish I came out sooner, and I do too, but I also sort of appreciate that like I came out when I came out. It was my experience, and like would it have been great if I came out at 17 and my first like intimate relationship where I sort of felt like a teen in love wasn't at 25 and it was at like 17, like that would have been wonderful. But at the same time I wasn't ready, and it wasn't like I didn't have like the mental stability at that point in my life to do it.
Do you feel like, okay, so this is a really good lead in, I'm wondering, right? So when you came out 24, do you then feel like developmentally in relationships it was like going back to a different age?
Yeah. I think that's what's really hard for people to understand, is like especially the first person that you have like feelings for, if that comes later in life, you have the emotional, like Jen's looking at me because she knew that my first relationship was so problematic and she like didn't know what to say because she wanted to obviously be supportive, but there was a time where she was like, you need to break up with him.
I got to the point, and you know that takes me a long time.
It really, for Jen to give such a strong opinion, that's not,
it was bad.
But no, it felt like all I had known was being in the closet or being with this person, and it was this like, you're on this like post coming out high that you don't realize you have for like a long time, and then that like can spiral within your first relationship where it's so codependent and it's so intense. So, and then afterwards, your next relationships, it's like, I wonder why I don't have that feeling as much anymore. But it's the same thing as like...
But it's the same thing as like what you go through when you have relationships kind of early in life.
Yeah, but like you went through it in 7th grade.
Exactly.
And I went through it at 25.
Exactly. And I think the tough thing too, when there's a difference there is that if you have friends who have already gone through it.
Yeah.
And they're like, what are you doing in that relationship, right? There's a harder ability to connect with that experience.
Yeah.
So I was just trying to let you go through it at the time because I knew that eventually you would work through it.
It took some time, but
I remember I was sitting at Panera. I think I was in the Westchester, and we were either on the phone or we were texting. And I remember that time period, and I texted you. I said, listen, I think you got to get out of it. I was like, I've given you enough time.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I knew.
But everyone goes through that in different ways, right? Everyone goes through those really toxic relationships. So can you speak a little bit to, as you were starting to date and open and out of the closet, what was that like for you in terms of like learning about those relationships and yourself in those relationships?
Well, I think gay dating is very different than hetero dating. Let's just start with that. I think the expectation of hetero dating is like, let's take as a guy, it's like, let's ask a girl out, let's take her on a date. Maybe you kiss her at the end of the night, maybe not. And then you ask for a second date. And I think we all have this preconceived notion of what like hetero dating looks like.
Well, there's a lot of rules, right?
A lot of rules.
And there's a script. So it's easier almost to follow because it's like, I'm the girl, so I should be the one, who, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like, it's like, there's more clear roles.
Right.
A lot of things to quote unquote unlearn once you start dating in the gay world. Because, I mean, you log on and it's like, hey, can I blow you in the Chili's parking lot? And I'm like, hi, I'm Jason. And it's just like, you're sort of like, whoa.
We're on two different levels here.
Different.
Like, why Chili's?
Different. Yeah. Well,
Chili's is good.
Applebee's or more cars. I don't know. Like, I
have to tell you, I don't think Chili's is good. And I grew up thinking it was. And then about 2 years ago, went back while intoxicated, thinking like it's going to feel really good. Mm-hmm. It was not.
No.
I'm going to be completely honest here. I've never been to Chili's.
Yeah.
I've been to Fridays with you.
I love Fridays.
I knew that was it.
Where Jen and I grew up, there wasn't like a convenient Chili's to go to.
Right?
Yeah, no, it's not her fault.
There was a Chili's.
And there was no Chick-fil-A.
Chick-fil-A wasn't. How do you feel about Chick-fil-A?
Like,
you just brought up Chick-fil-A.
It's so problematic, but the nugs, like, it's just
so good,
I know. I try not to.
Yeah, they're still fucking assholes. But
horrible.
Okay, so you enter into this world that's incredibly different than the one you were in, the dating world.
Yeah.
So how do you then start to process that? Because it doesn't also sound like you had like a ton of gay and queer friends.
No, I literally
you.
had no gay or queer friends.
Like no one to
guide me. And it's still hard because I feel like I'm in a very different life stage than a lot of my hetero friends who have certain, I mean, you guys have talked about this on your podcast too, especially with Jen being electing to be childless, right?
Yeah.
And it's like you're in a very different life stage, quote unquote, than it feels like. Like I remember when I started dating someone, they were like, "Are you thinking you guys are going to be engaged?" And I was like, whoa, like that's so far from my radar. Like this is my first boyfriend.
Like you would never ask a 16-year-old.
I was like,
right?
Yeah, I'm like, when I grow up, maybe, but like it's not like that's like really far. I mean, and some guys get to that, like some gay guys in relationships get to that level pretty quickly. But for me, I'm like, that is like really far from my radar. I'm just trying to like test these waters out. Mm-hmm. So, and it's very different. It's a very different expectation, and I think that being gay, it's definitely, I'm certain that it's a lot quicker to the point. Like there's less wooing period. Mm. Like I think you cut through the BS a lot quicker because you feel maybe more comfortable that they think in the same way as you sexually maybe. Whereas like there's this myth about how women think and they're not sexual and you can't figure it out. So they're like only doing it to like please a guy. So I think that you know, as a guy, you're like, I wonder if she would even want to do this, or like, I have to convince her. So you don't talk about, I don't know, you guys tell me, but did you talk like about sexual stuff like early when you start dating someone, like date 1 or 2, or like, verse, top, bottom, like what do you like?
Yes.
What's good? And like you get to it quick and it's like, see if you're sexually compatible, and it's much more, I think, comfortable for most gay guys to talk about, which I don't know if that's the same with hetero relationships.
I would say
no. And I think especially for cis hetero guys who are not, but like with women, I feel like we talk about it a lot more with our friends. So actually there is more of a comfort level where I think like a lot of straight guys are not doing this.
No.
Right?
Yeah. Right.
And also women are taught at a really young age how to please men, right? Like we're taught like, oh,
And
here's
not
how
how
you
to
give
please ourselves.
Yes, here's how to give a
express.
hand job, here's how to give a blow job,
Right.
right? So I think it is very different.
Yeah, I think it's actually harder in hetero relationships to navigate that because there's probably a lot of things each person wants to say that's maybe not as socially acceptable. Whereas gay guys, it's like, yeah, I don't like getting my dick sucked, but I like doing it. And you're like, cool. Want to get it like a coffee? Like it's very ingrained in conversation.
Is this in the conversation like on a dating app? You're sending it over like
Yeah, and not everyone's like that, but I'd say it's
point.
much more normal in terms of like this just openness about that aspect of your life.
Was that something that you had to acclimate to?
At first, yeah, for sure, because like if someone's like, hey, send pics, I'm like, should I? Is that something I do? Like I didn't know that about myself, right? Like you kind of have to figure that out. So
Do you send pics now?
It never with like, if I do, never with like my face in it or anything.
Right, good.
You know?
Smart,
but also,
smart, yeah.
I think there's different dating apps can be used for different purposes. So I think not every gay guy, but a lot of people go through phases where Grindr is very much hookup oriented. I mean, I met a boyfriend that I dated for 4 years on there, so it doesn't have to be, but it can be very hookup oriented. So sometimes the other apps are a little bit, if you're not looking for that at that exact moment, sometimes the other apps are a little easier and you can't always send photos on the other apps. So you can actually have more conversation where like, if you're not swapping pics on Grindr, people probably stop responding to you.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? Because it's that's the kind of the...
I love getting on Jason's dating apps.
Yeah.
You're probably is she good at it? Or is she too nice?
Sometimes she's like, oh, look at him, he's so nice.
That's
and I'm
right,
like,
yeah.
Jen, what
That's
are
what
you
I'm saying.
doing?
I can sort of see you being like, you let too many people in, I would imagine, right?
She's like, oh, look how nice he is. I'm like, Jen, we're way off here.
Also, we have a very different attraction to men.
Okay, well, guys, what is it? What's your different attraction?
Jason?
I mean, I'm definitely more attracted to blonde looking guys.
That look like your brother.
Yeah. Wait, half the people I date sort of resemble your brother.
Should we discuss what that means?
It really just
What
means
does
they're just like generic looking white dudes
Yes.
with glasses that
Yeah,
dress relatively well.
With blonde hair.
With blonde
Right,
hair.
yeah,
with
like that's
lighter
it.
hair, yeah.
So, okay, so more of an Aryan taste will you?
Yeah,
Exactly.
exactly.
Like when I'm on Jason's
The
Grindr,
chupacabra, the blonde
I have
right?
to like look through Jason's like perspective of like what he might like.
But also Jen's like trying to like look at like, especially if it's like a random Friday night and we're like drinking or something, Jen's like trying to like analyze like who they are as a person. I'm like, Jen, I just like want to get dick. Like you don't need to like. She's like, but look, this means he has a great relationship with his mother. And I'm like, Jen, like, not for me.
Okay, wait, which is so funny. Okay, wait, but it's really funny because like, remember Jared Freed talked about like how like women, it's like business,
Yeah.
right? Like they have a good relationship with their mom. Where's the longevity of this relationship? Where men, it's like, no, this is pleasure, man. Like this shit's not business.
Yeah, 100%.
I don't care, right? Like so, it's
Yeah.
very different when you look into it.
So it's actually funny because a lot, like one of the big differences I've noticed is sometimes with gay guys who maybe have been on the apps for a while, gone through, had a couple relationships, you almost like want to do the sexual thing first. Just like, let's do this date one. If we're compatible, then we can date. Right? Because it's like, oh, do you really want to start to get to like someone and then there's like no sexual chemistry there and then you sort of have to backtrack. So it's a lot more like to the point.
Well, do you think it's also for women because we've been taught don't ever have sex the first dates?
Oh, yeah.
Like there's so much like sexual shame, but there's also got to be a ton of like internalized sexual shame with being gay.
Do the thing where I have to call bullshit.
Okay, let's.
Okay,
Oh,
we're gonna
Do it right now because
right
that's
now.
a great lead.
Okay, the lead. So, Jason,
thing.
a segment that we do with all of our guests is called Calling Bullshit. So tell us, call some bullshit on something about your life.
Okay, bullshit. Is that what I do?
Yeah.
Bullshit. So definitely, I think the fact that people think gay guys are just more sexual than hetero guys and gals, because like girls are very sexual.
Yeah.
It's just sort of what we've been talking about, that it's not taught socially to allow you guys to be communicative about it, and for there to be that openness on the first couple of dates where it's like, oh, this is something we can talk about to see if it's compatible. It's like this hidden veil of you have to wait to find out, and you can't cross any lines, and girls actually don't want that. Like, bullshit. Like, I know from you guys, like, bullshit. Like, girls are just as sexual as guys are.
Totally.
Yes. But it's really funny because there's all that research that talks about that, like, that cis heterosexual women report the lowest quality of sex life. Like, the most unfulfilled sex life is straight women.
I think a lot of that has to do with, like, that whole, like, also straight guys aren't taught how to please women.
Yes.
Right? Like, that is not something you know growing up or allowed to talk about. It's like, hey, if she sleeps with you, you're lucky and you take what you get. But it's never like, hey,
think about her pleasure.
Think about her pleasure, and this is what you should be
You're
doing.
just thinking about yourself,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, no, exactly.
Well, and I feel like that goes back into so much, like, you talked about it, like, before you said, like, quote unquote unlearning, and I feel like that's like a big part, right? So, like, we compare all I think we compare all things to whiteness and straightness.
Yeah.
Right? So, like, that's like the comparable bar.
Yeah.
But, like, really, we should be unlearning away from those things.
100%.
Those are the things that fuck us up and make us very close-minded.
You know what I always notice? Like, if you're, if you have a kid and they're like, oh, like, she has a crush on Johnny or something. Like,
I can't get into that.
That they're straight.
Even with my niece, like, and my
serious?
sister,
Oof.
who will probably listen to this, and I feel bad calling her out. She's always like,
She's the best, though.
She is the best. She's like, it's Amelia's boyfriend, and I'm like, maybe Amelia's gonna have a girlfriend,
right?
Like,
yes,
there's an automatic. But the thing is, it's
but
so
that's okay though. But I do it too,
right.
and I identify as a gay male and some member of the queer community, but I'm also like, Amelia, it's your boyfriend Mason, like so cute, But it's like that's just what's ingrained in us and how to think, and it's hard to unlearn.
There was a TikTok trend a while ago that was like, it was like how I'm gonna treat like the first girl that dates my son, and right, do you remember this? And all I could think about was like, dude, like, what are you fucking talking about? That is, one, so insane and inappropriate. Two, like, yeah, good. So, like, there's a really good chance that first girl that he dates is just a friend.
Right.
So why are you traumatizing this little girl?
Exactly. But you know what? It comes so it's so ingrained. There's this internalized idea that we're comparing everything to straightness.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I love that calling bullshit you just did.
That was a very
I was gonna say I love that we compare everything to straightness. I'm like, oh yeah, is that convenient for you, Jen? No, me too. I like that one.
Okay, wait. So I want to know, Jason.
Also, when's Jason going to interview us?
Oh my
I have
God.
a couple questions for you guys that I know your
We should
listeners.
do an Instagram of that, though. We should, like, do a video. Okay, we'll let you interview us at the end, only because we think that it's funny.
Okay.
Nobody will be interested. So you guys can just, after Jason answers this next question, you could just exit off of the podcast because it won't be
you
as
guys
good.
think people are more interested in your guests than you, and that's complete opposite.
I'm
Like,
more
people
interested in
love-
my guests than
Yeah,
me.
I know, but people love you guys, and they want to know about you. So
I just want to know more about you. Okay, so if you could tell anything to your younger self, what would you want to say to him?
Such a good question.
We didn't prep you for this one.
It's funny because my mind immediately goes like, invest in Google. like, do you remember when Emily's brother was talking to you about Bitcoin in 2013? You should have listened. No, but like that's like my immediate response for like right now because I'm like, God, it'd be nice to not have to go to work tomorrow. But no, I think I would tell myself that like, hey, you are facing a lot of anxiety and a lot of depression. And you probably don't even know what that is. But it's a bad feeling. And know that it won't always feel that way. And it will go up and down. And what you're feeling is okay. And is that...
That's beautiful.
She's going to cry. Oh,
yeah.
Here.
And I think
Waterworks,
that's...
baby.
Because I think I was so, like... That's the other thing. Like, this episode we've talked about, like, homosexual versus heterosexual relationships and, the being gay, but... just in general, what I love about you guys is bringing mental health to the forefront because no one ever talked to me about anxiety and depression growing up. It's like, you have a problem. You need to go see a therapist and get it fixed. But don't tell anyone you're going to see a therapist. Like, that was and I'm like,
so embarrassing.
It was so embarrassing. Meanwhile, I'm like having panic attacks and like in bouts of depression because I have all this internalized, like deep internalized homophobia that I'm battling. And like, I had no idea. All I knew was like, I feel really anxious. I feel like I'm crawling out of my skin. I feel depressed and I'm not allowed to talk about that. So, like, that's also, like, I tell myself two things. One, like, of course, being gay is okay. But also, like, the mental health thing that you're going through, that's a lot of people feel that way. And I didn't know that until like almost like Jen, when Jen told me, she was like, I'm gonna like air your dirty laundry. I think you were telling me you were feeling like super depressed, and I'm like, other people feel depressed.
When was
I was
it?
like,
remember in 8th grade,
it was like
I was depressed for a full year.
Yeah, it was in like it was in like it was like late middle school, early high school. You talked about how you like told me how depressed you were feeling, and I was like, wait, other people feel that?
I can't believe I told you.
Yeah, but we didn't. It was in like almost passing.
I was like, hey, it's up, I'm depressed.
You're like, hey, what's up? Don't look at me.
Don't look at me.
I'm in a
really
depression.
depressed.
And I'm like, whoa.
I'm so glad I
Yeah, I don't think I ever told you that,
No,
but
I don't think you did.
but I remember that, and I remember there was like one other girl in high school who like talked to me about her anxiety, and I'm like, whoa, other people feel this, and it was almost like that if I would have found out someone was gay, because both of those things just weren't talked about.
Well, so we'll end with that inclusive language is suicide prevention, right?
100%.
So when you say to your child, right, oh, right, there's like a school that's like a song that's like sang in like preschools and stuff where it's like, some people have two mommies and some people have two daddies, some people are raised by auntie, and that's a family, right? And it goes around like all these different types of families. That's suicide prevention. Like when we talk about mental health, that's suicide prevention. It's all the shit before. It's not telling people to text a crisis line when they're already so deep in. It's all the shit you do beforehand to talk about stuff.
No, you always like hit home with those sayings. You know what
That's
I'm saying?
my wrap-up.
You really do.
Okay, I'm going to give you 5 minutes
I get 5
of
minutes.
rapid fire.
Okay. All right. So
Do you need to get your phone? You had really good
I
questions.
do have questions, but I remember some of them. But
Okay.
I might run over there and get it. Okay. What would your autobiography be called?
Oh God, I have so many.
So many autobiographies.
I've written so many autobiographies. I don't know which one to start with. Maybe like the things I wish people told me.
That's a good one.
Mine's the things I wish I told people.
Should we just combine ours?
Yeah,
because
yeah.
God forbid we do anything separate.
Because
like
we're
it.
so
That's a good one.
codependent. Okay.
That's a good one. Yeah, mine would be something like completely unrelated
Like what?
that you would have to read the whole book, like how to like a 12-minute banana bread recipe, and you'd go through the whole book and you're like, what the hell?
That's like when you look up recipes and you're like, I just tell me how long to bake this for and at what temperature, and they're like, when me and my mom
yeah,
were
it's like,
younger.
did you ever want to have the aroma of fresh flowers? And you're like, okay, like I'm just trying to make chicken.
I'm scrolling to do it the whole time.
Yeah. All right. Next question.
Mm-hmm.
So, you guys talk about making therapy more relatable.
Mm-hmm.
What else do you wish was more relatable?
Finances.
That's a good one.
How to invest.
That's a good
When
one.
you talk about cryptocurrency, I want so badly, and I don't understand anything you're saying. You could literally be talking to me in a different language, and I'm like, yes, yes, yes. And even when my accountant talks to me, I'm like, yeah, yeah, yeah. And then I walk out, and I'm like, I don't know what anyone just said.
Pooping.
That's mine. That's mine. There's so much shame around it, and
Or like having something in your teeth.
yeah, like why like if
Yeah,
someone
why don't that is I
Or
don't
like a booger, having a booger.
Yeah.
Just tell people.
That's a
yeah
good
just
one,
tell
too.
everyone, right?
Everyone
Oh, that's
has
a very
a
good
booger,
one. Okay,
Right?
yeah.
I took it to another
Mine
level.
was Bitcoin.
Okay. Next question.
Yeah.
Do you a little more serious?
Okay.
I know you guys come off as very confident in your profession.
Yes.
And confident in kind of your education and how you
Yes.
got to this point. When you're interviewing people, or when people are interviewing you, or even when you're with clients, do you guys ever have self-doubt about
Yes.
what you're telling people?
All the time.
I think the hardest part about doing what we do is people want us to be experts, and we are not. And we are very much not experts. People that are experts know everything about their topic, right? Someone who is an expert in Bitcoin knows all the different ins and outs. That's not us. We're just relatable.
I also think that when you put a podcast out and you talk about certain topics, it's hard to make it relate to every single person. Like,
Because it doesn't.
It doesn't.
Yeah.
And so that's the thing I doubt, is that like when we're putting the podcast out, I'm like, when we talk to clients, we were thinking about them specifically and like what they were going through.
Yeah.
When you put a podcast out, you can't be like, oh, this listener went through
Yeah.
this. You
Well,
kind of just have
and
to-
also
Yeah.
all research is based on white heterosexual people, because the majority of people that are participating in research are in academic settings, right?
Yep.
So if you're working on a research project in graduate school, it's a lot of times it's kids from undergraduate psychology classes who have to do the research for credits. And so you're just getting more of the same shit all the time. So
Yeah.
people want us to like have all these like statistics and research, and it's like, but a lot of this research does not like go to everyone.
No, 100%.
It's like right now psychology is going through what they call a crisis of results, meaning all the research that was done in the 80s and 90s doesn't actually work the same way anymore because it's not the same.
Yeah.
And that, things change. I feel like that's always the case with research.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I also should have said this at the very beginning that, like, my experience as a gay man is coming from a very privileged place.
Yes.
Like, I grew up in a middle class, like, as a white male, and I'm, like, you know, top of the food chain in terms of, like, my privilege.
Yeah.
So thou shall not take what I say as representation because I know that I am in the...
For same thing.
Because I know that I am...
Thou shalt not.
Thou shalt... Because I know that I am in a very privileged place,
Yep.
even being a minority in terms of being queer.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I love that. Any other questions?
One last question for us.
Oof. Oh my goodness.
Final
Question.
Final one. It's the
the
final
final
countdown.
All right.
Okay.
Who would play you in the movie of your life?
Oh my god, I really fucking hope that it's
I have answers for both of you, I think.
Oh, just tell us.
No.
No,
You have to answer
no.
first, and then I'll
wait,
tell you who I think would play each of you.
but then of course as soon as I say her name went out of my brain. Katniss Everdeen.
That's mine.
What? What's her name?
She can't play both of us.
Actually, I was gonna say
Jennifer Lawrence.
Jennifer
I
Lawrence.
actually was gonna say we're gonna Lindsay Lohan you guys, and Jennifer Lawrence is gonna play both of you at different points in her life. And it's
Like
good-
Parent Trap.
That's what I'm saying.
You're not gonna say
Yeah,
that.
I swear to God.
No, you fucking
I swear to
weren't.
God, I was gonna say I think Jennifer Lawrence could play both of you in different parts of like her
Yo,
life.
this is the mind meld of the century.
As long as it's not Kristen Stewart, I'm fine.
Yeah.
Just because she talks out of her mouth too much, you know.
Yeah.
But you know that I'm
Don't
obsessed
we all
with.
talk out of our mouth?
No, but I mean like the way,
Side of her
right?
mouth,
But
I
like,
see.
but like Drew Barrymore does that. But I'm obsessed with Drew Barrymore.
Right.
Wait, do
Right.
you guys know we weren't recording? I'm just kidding.
If you want to give us a heart attack, you tell us to record a whole podcast episode and then say we're not recording. So
All right.
we will end on that note.
We
And
love you.
we
We're
love
gonna
you
end with
so
we
love
love
you,
you,
Jason.
Jason.
This was
Thank
Wait,
you for
let's do this
coming.
every week so we can just hang out.
Absolutely.
Deal!
If this was helpful for you, if you think it'd be helpful for a friend, send it on over. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe. And follow on Apple Podcasts. And don't forget to know yourself.
And grow yourself.
No, you
No.
gotta grow yourself.
No,
Oh, you want
wait. To grow yourself, you gotta know
Shit.
yourself.
know yourself
We just all screwed
and
it up.
then blow yourself.
That's it.
That's it.
That's what it is. We'll see you guys next time.
Bye.